Hi, thanks for joining us today on Real Estate Insiders TV. I'm Danny Poulos with the Elite Lending Team at Femby, and our guest this morning is Jennifer Cuhna with the Law Office of J.M. Cuhna, the J standing for Jennifer. And we're going to be focusing on the rights and concerns of landlords today and their relationship to tenants and a lot of legal matters. So, Jen, take a minute, tell people what you do, how long you've been doing it, and then we'll dive right in.
I'm a real estate litigator. I've been practicing law for 7 years doing real estate litigation. We represent lots of homeowners associations, landlords, realtors, investors. If there's a fight about property, that's what we do. And we've been doing landlord-tenant work basically since I got out of law school, 7 years.
All right, so we're talking to the right person. And it's really an interesting topic because people think it's an easy deal, you know, buy a piece of property, find a tenant, get a check every month.
Yes.
But they don't realize how many things can go wrong and how many people don't make money as landlords because they don't know the things we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. I have a piece of property and I've got to find somebody to pay me every month to live there. I need to find a tenant.
Sure.
How do I find a good one?
Well, the first thing to know is that you're going to be married to your tenant usually for at least a year, maybe longer. So you want to get a good tenant. You want to get somebody that you want to work with, somebody that you want in your property if possible. The way that you can do that is not necessarily by talking to the most recent landlord or their current landlord, because if they're bad tenants, their current landlord is going to lie to you and tell you that they're fantastic because they want them out of their house. I would recommend going back to the last 3 landlords. You can cross-reference their addresses and stuff in the official records to make sure you're actually not talking to their best friend, and see, what do the prior landlords say? Were they bad tenants? They'll tell you the truth as long as they're not in your property. Obviously, you want to do credit checks on the people who are going to be paying you, but you want to do background checks on everybody over 18. Mom and dad might be great, but if the son is there and maybe he's 20, 21, you have no idea. Maybe he's going to graffiti the neighbor's house. So
right.
You want to do background checks on everybody who's over 18 and make sure there's no criminal issues going on.
All right, so their ability to pay obviously is one of the things you're going to check.
Absolutely.
Then we want to know, have they paid people in the past?
Yeah.
And
did they destroy the premises? Did they receive the security deposit? Were they good people? What happened?
And I think great advice. The prior landlord, again, is trying to get them out. You're going to say, great. They don't need a security deposit or anything. They're wonderful. He's just trying to get them out the door.
Oh, yeah. And, the other way to protect yourself, absolutely, is to get a good lease. Don't use the FAR bar necessarily, because the FAR bar won't protect the landlord. It's a great tenant lease. If you can get a lease from a lawyer, we have one for $50 online. It's 10 minutes to fill it out. You get it from a lawyer. It's great, and it will protect the landlord in so many ways. Right.
So again, it's not as simple as it looks. It's going into the office supply store and grabbing one of those leases off the shelf.
Oh no!
You're not going to be protected by that.
Please,
you're looking for trouble.
Yes, you absolutely are. And if you have a good lease and your tenant's going south, you have so many more options. It's an investment, almost like insurance, in that. If something goes wrong, you have so many more options to protect yourself.
Now, let's say the person doesn't have perfect credit. There are some issues on their credit. Maybe they were good with their last landlord, but with the one before there were some problems. Would you still take somebody on as a tenant?
I would. I would do it, and I would get double or triple security deposit. I think that just because somebody has bad credit, life happens. People go through divorces, people had foreclosures. Maybe 10 years ago they had an eviction. You can protect yourself absolutely by getting double or triple security deposit. Even if somebody doesn't have bad credit and is a good person, one of the most popular things right now is to get first month's rent, and instead of last month's rent, you get 2 months of security deposit. So when they move out, you have extra money to put into whatever they've ruined in the house, or send back to them if they were angels. But it's not any more money initially out of pocket for the tenant.
Point is, you don't have to wait for the perfect tenant. There's ways to make it work if somebody's somewhere in between. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about when things go bad.
Oh boy.
What's the first signs that things maybe aren't heading in the right direction?
A lot of landlords are taken for rides, especially if they're new to the industry, or maybe they have one property, or they're not experienced landlords. Tenants, I have no idea. Some of them have radar, and they just know this is going to be someone I can take advantage of. If that's the case, I say jump a little bit at the first sign of trouble. If you have a tenant and you go in and you know, it smells like smoke, and now, you know, the place is kind of messy and there's a dog you didn't know was going to be there, you can send a 7-day notice of non-compliance. You can say, hey, listen, we're so happy you're here, but we need to just like keep things on the up and up. You need to get rid of the dog. No smoking in the house. It's going to be really expensive for us to turn this unit if it smells this way, or whatever your lease says they're not allowed to do. If they start to violate that, you absolutely can send a very simple 7-day notice of non-compliance. If it's serious, then you can do a material non-compliance termination notice. I once represented a woman back in the day, who moved into Jupiter Farms, and she had no idea that living in the farms came with a lot of snakes. And she heard that if she pruned the trees, they would go away. So she had a friend with a buzzsaw, and she was Section 8, but she had a friend with a buzzsaw, and she leveled 1¼ acres of trees. Gone. Like, just gone. Completely.
She thought that was okay.
She thought it was okay. She just, their trees were gone. You know, if you have somebody who's damaging your unit, threatening you, is very, very, very serious, you can terminate them. Give them 7-day notice of termination and call it a day. Obviously, if people stop paying, you can do a 3-day notice of non-compliance and get them paying again, hopefully, or if not, do an eviction. Because if you do an eviction, you know, early on, then you're not out months and months and months. I represented a guy who had $12,000 owed to him over 3 or 4 years, and the woman, the tenant, was a professional woman. She just got behind here and there, and she'd pay kind of whenever. And when he did the math, it was $12,000. So jump on it. As soon as things go south, jump on a notice and see if it gets better.
And I think a lot of landlords are probably okay as long as they're getting the check on time, and maybe they let a lot of things go.
Yeah.
But from these stories you're telling, you really sort of have to smell when things may be going sideways.
Yeah.
And do what you're supposed to do rather than just go along for the ride, especially when you make note that there are some people that are like professional tenants.
Yes.
And know how to take advantage of landlords. So if you're not a savvy landlord, or you don't have an attorney in your corner, it'll end up costing you more money than you're possibly going to make with a good tenant.
You know, if things are getting weird and you're not really sure if it's something that you can do something about or not, we are so happy to give you information and send you on your way. I do it all day long.
Right.
Sometimes we get 40 phone calls a day from people who are like, oh, my tenant's doing this, what do you think? I am so happy to just help you out and send you on your way. And then people don't get into these binds of having a lot of money owed to them, or their units are destroyed, or whatever it is.
All right, so they see there's trouble, and now it's time for the big E word. So they've got to throw somebody out. They've got to evict them. How does that process work? And I know it's not fun for the landlord or the tenant, but in a simple matter, how does it work?
Okay, well, every eviction, pretty much every eviction is going to be premised on those notices we talked about a minute ago. You have a 3-day notice of non-payment, then you can have a 7-day notice of non-compliance, a 7-day notice of termination. Those need to be done very, very, very well. It's called like facially correct. If the numbers are wrong, if the information is wrong, judges can kick the eviction and make you amend your notice, make you start over. So making sure that those notices are correct is really huge, important thing. After you know that your notice is correct, then it starts with a complaint, of course, for eviction. And sometimes people call this and think of it as a 5-day warning to tenants, and actually it's kind of a misnomer. You file the complaint, it gets served on the tenants, and the tenants have 5 business days to come up with a really great excuse about why they didn't pay, or why they, why they destroyed the unit, or whatever it is. I've heard all kinds of reasons, but the most important one is if it's really true and the landlord screwed up, then now you have a problem. But if it's not true, and lots of times it's not true, sometimes tenants just file answers because they know it'll buy them a hearing or a mediation, then you just keep going. The nice thing is,
so if they're not paying, you're saying that they may just have an excuse for not paying, and that's what's going.
Yes.
Right?
They might say, "Dear judge, I'm really sorry I haven't paid. Things are really tough. My child is sick." Maybe they don't even have a child, but sometimes they just write things in because they've done this so many times. They know that if they make you go to a mediation and they write something into court, then you wind up having to pay more or talk to them, or maybe you have a sympathetic judge who for whatever reason lets them win. Now that's not the typical situation, but it does delay it, and they know they're delaying
I
it.
don't think you would want to be a landlord without representation. in a situation like that? Because it sounds like it could be very expensive.
Typically not, and the reason is because sometimes landlords wind up in these mediations, and even in the mediation, they put in bad information into their agreements. So, at any rate, if you are a landlord and you're doing an eviction, it's really helpful to have legal representation.
Yeah, I didn't mean it was expensive to have representation.
Okay.
I meant it was expensive not to have it.
Yes.
So, since that's who you are, take a minute and tell everybody how they can reach you
Sure.
most easily.
My phone number is 561-231-0640, and we are so happy to answer any questions, send you on your way if we possibly can.
Excellent, Jen. Always a pleasure. Great
you.
information.